Buddy, welcome back to Off the Bench. Brandon Carney alongside Madi Kroll. Madi, there is a little bit of breaking news before we just got on. Jeff Saturday is the Colts' new interim head coach. They plucked him out of the ESPN studio and are putting him just right on the sideline. What are your initial reactions to this? Because I'm very confused and don't really know what they're doing other than maybe throwing the season away at this point.
Yeah, I was driving home. You were actually the one who told me about the hiring, and I was kind of just like, wait, what? We all knew Frank Reich was on his way out. It was written in the stars after everything that was happening. They weren't prepared. The Colts weren't prepared coming into this season. They had no answers for the offensive line. It looked terrible. And then I also feel like Ballard's on the hot seat. So I think that they're just like, get us through the season and we'll figure things out in the offseason.
Yeah, well,
but this puts them at the top of the list now for, they're going to be able to start interviewing head coaches early.
Right. I mean, they brought in Frank Reich with the hope that he would, fix the offense, lead the offense, and it's been one of the most unproductive offenses in the league this season. You can pin some of that on Matt Ryan. You can pin some of it on Sam Ehlinger starting his first few games of his career. But at the end of the day,
the offensive line.
Right. The
Ehlinger was sacked
obviously
9 times.
Yeah. I mean, hey, as a Patriots fan, I was pretty excited about that. But, as a Colts, not fan, but from their perspective, that is brutal. And they are in real shambles right now. So if Reich's not getting it done with the offense, they still had weapons to do something. You would think, Jonathan Taylor in the games that he's played even haven't gone well. Obviously, he was out this past Sunday. Deion Jackson had nowhere to go. Michael Pittman not doing much. So that offense has been struggling. The Jeff Saturday thing, still weird regardless. So as Adam Schefter tweeted, Saturday's been a consultant for the team is in its ring of honor and was head coach for the Hebron Christian Academy football team in Dacula, Georgia. So apparently the Hebron Christian Academy football team is the stepping stone to the NFL. All you have to do is get a job there and the NFL is right around the corner. So I don't know. This is really weird. I've never seen somebody with that little coaching experience get named an interim head coach. In fact, I've never seen somebody from essentially outside the organization get named interim head coach. Like, he's a consultant, but normally you see a coordinator or someone on the coaching staff become the interim. They were like, hey, how about you stop doing the 7 a.m. Sports Center and just come coach our football team while we, go for Bryce Young. So
all about who you know.
All about who you know. We'll see if he's around after this year. I have no idea what to think.
Sorry. I was just going to say the embarrassment of 121 total yards by the Colts. That's what they finished with yesterday. Are you kidding me?
And in fairness, the Patriots defense is good. However, the Patriots defense also got gashed by the Bears a couple weeks ago in another game that I was at. So I had to watch and suffer through that.
That's wild to me. I mean, you're an NFL team.
Right. Now, on to more important things. I was in attendance. I'm still in Atlanta right now, hopping on a flight back in a few hours. I was in Atlanta.
Can you flash your jersey really quick?
We're getting there, Maddie. We're getting there. I was at the Falcons-Chargers game. I made a slight purchase. Now, this jersey is number 8. For those of you familiar, that would be Kyle Pitts. Don't ask me why I did this after what he's put me through this year. I was trying to change the luck, adjust the tides a little bit. It didn't go great. I watched that game. I watched Kyle Pitts do a few things. First thing was have a touchdown basically bounce off his hands in the end zone. I saw another deep bomb to the right side that he did not even make an effort for. And then I saw Marcus Mariota overthrow the absolute hell out of him on what would have been a massive game-changing play. I don't know what I've done to deserve this. I've said this before. But I also continue to make the wrong choice between Kyle Pitts and Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end Cade Otton, who last week when I was like, I started him over Pitts, I'm sure a lot of listeners were like, what? Why did you do that? I know Pitts has been bad. Yeah, Cade Otton had like 15 fantasy points this week after that touchdown to win the Bucs the game. I cannot make the right choice between the two. I only wore this for the start of the podcast because this needs to come off, and I need it to come off now because it's burning my skin at this point. I feel like I have sunburn, and Kyle Pitts needs to go. So I'm done with Kyle Pitts once again. Maddie, if you hear me say that I'm starting him in fantasy ever again, I want you to reach through the screen and just whack me across the face because I'm done. I don't know what to think anymore.
It's so funny to me because you posted on your Instagram that you bought this jersey before the game even started. And I was like, he just jinxed himself. You literally jinxed yourself.
And that's the thing is one of my buddies that I was at the game with was like, you jinxed him because you bought the jersey, whatever. I'm like, yeah, as if he hasn't been absolute ass for 6 out of their 8 games this year. I didn't jinx anything. I just happened to be wearing the jersey on one of the 80% of games where he tends to be garbage. So I don't know what to think. I'm done with Kyle Pitts. I say that, and yet I don't have a better option to start. Cade Otton's going to get scooped now because he's apparently good, which I kind of knew, and he just had a bad game last week. But the tight end situation in Atlanta is very weird. I'm over Kyle Pitts, but I wanted to get that out of the way.
I feel like we're having deja vu right now.
We are. We do this every single week because as I go through the week, I start to convince myself, I'm like, well, he's Kyle Pitts. They drafted him 4th. I do what I did basically before the season. They drafted him 4th. They'll probably start to get him involved. No, they won't. They're going to throw the ball to Michael Pruitt or to nobody, and Marcus Mariota, when he does throw to him, is going to overthrow him. So it's just pain. It's pain all the way around. Let's get to actual good players. How about that? Players that had good performances this past week. 2 guys really stood out to me. I'll talk about one and then hand the other over to you. Justin Fields. So we talked about him a little bit last week. We said, is this for real? Does it seem like he's actually getting on track and turning into the quarterback that the Bears drafted him to be? Sure looks that way. He had another great performance. Ever since the Bears, tweaked their scheme a little bit to allow Justin Fields to play more to his strengths, to run more, he has been on fire. They went out and traded for Chase Claypool. Obviously didn't make a huge impact in his first game, but still that's another weapon for him to work with going forward. Fields, I believe 4 total touchdowns, 61-yard rushing touchdown. The guy went off, and he's starting to look like, as of right now, the runaway best quarterback from the 2021 class. I mean, I don't want to make that overreaction after only 3 weeks of good play, but he's the only one in this class that has really ever played this well. I mean, Mac Jones' season last year, he was really good, 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting, Offensive Rookie of the Year voting, but even then, he was kind of just holding down the fort, not making any mistakes.
It's vanilla.
Right. Fields is making plays. So if he keeps playing like this, he's going to end up being the best quarterback in the class. And I just wanted to shout him out, let Bears fans know that, hey, I guess you guys are in good hands under center after all. And now you can hopefully just try and build around him.
What was exciting to me was the fact that we saw what he did with his legs the past couple of weeks, right? Everybody got excited about it. We were comparing him to Lamar Jackson, but for me, what was exciting was his legs opened up the middle of the field for some design, just quick throws, and that's where the money's at. If he can become a dual threat like that, and the Bears can continue to support him by getting players who can catch a ball. I mean, I know that we have Claypool coming in and all that good stuff, but I'm excited to see where this goes because I feel like he's on the up and up. Hopefully, the Bears organization backs him up and gives him the tools that he needs to be able to be successful because he's got some talent. I think everybody's aware now.
And it's another one where it makes me question even more the Roquan Smith trade, right? Because Fields playing like this makes you feel like the Bears are getting potentially close to contention. If they have a good offseason next year, they won't do anything this year as far as playoffs go. But next year, like they can be building, and trading away a great linebacker like that is still weird. It tells me maybe there's some things going on behind the scenes, again, relating to that trade request we had before the season. Who knows? But either way, the Bears are on the up and up. Good for them. Nice to see. I'm glad that Justin Fields is playing well because he was honestly my favorite quarterback coming out of that draft. I was like,
really?
Just because the league, you can see it going so much more toward running quarterbacks. Every top tier quarterback can run to some degree now. And it seems like the more you can run, the better. It's like, we'll figure out the mental side of it with you guys or the arm side of it. Like we can develop that easier than we can develop instincts with running. So I was very excited for Fields and I'm glad to see him playing well, but we did have one other player that went absolutely off. For the Cincinnati Bengals. You may have heard the guy that got like 50 fantasy points on his own.
Mr. Joe Mixon. Boomer Sooner. What was wild is, okay, so this this game was out of area for my viewing. So like I caught a little bit on Red Zone, but then the rest of it was just like me watching film today. I was like quickly preparing for this game. It was wild to me that the Bengals literally were so far ahead that they were playing their backups in the third quarter. Like that is wild to me. But no, Joe Mixon went off. The Panthers had no answer. He was doing whatever he wanted. The touchdown, the 5th touchdown where he came up and he was like 5. I was like, go off, King. But we needed that, right? We have one big wide receiver down. And we knew Joe Mixon had it, So it was nice to see him go off a little bit.
Yeah, I had a couple takeaways from that game. First, apparently the Bengals don't only need Jamar Chase to be able to succeed because they can just give Joe Mixon the ball 400 times. Second, there's a reason that the Panthers this morning fired both their defensive backs coach and their defensive line coach. So Joe Mixon may have lost 2 men their jobs, but that's all right. One of them being Paul Pasqualoni, former UConn head coach, by the way. Shout out Huskies.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, Paul, well, it wasn't really our best years, but Paul is now looking for another job. But yeah, the Panthers are, they are who we thought they were as of right now. They got blown out by the Bengals. I expected to see the Panthers get blown out basically the rest of the year once we saw where they were heading. They fired their head coach. So probably
Baker came back in.
Right. Baker came in the second half because of how awful they were. But yeah, I will say the funniest tweet I probably saw from that whole game was when they took Burrow out. I think it was either late in the third quarter or the fourth. They were like, yeah, Bengals are showing some mercy here by taking Joe Burrow out of the game. But Joe Mixon's still in, so not really. So yeah, Mixon torched the Panthers. Was not a great scene. And no. I don't know. The Bengals are getting back to their identity. It'll be exciting to see how far they can go when they do get Jamar Chase back. But for now, maybe they can hold down the fort without him after, kind of an iffy performance last week. And then let's get to what I believe is the best division in football. Now, Maddie, if you were to hear me say that without seeing our little graphic or seeing our show sheet, what division would you think that would be? Do you agree that this is the best division in football, that being the AFC East?
100%. I mean, they're showing out. I don't know what happened to the Bills. We should get into that first. Because
we can get into that. Absolutely. That was part of what sparked the conversation because, you might think, well, the Bills lost. How is this the best division? Because the Jets beat them and the Jets have played well most of the year now. Like they've had a couple of off games, but in general, the Jets are vastly outperforming expectations. And it's on the back of their defense. Josh Allen has put up kind of 2 straight, not so great games passing wise. I mean, they beat the Packers, but it was not a good game for Josh Allen. He's been at basically 200 passing yards each of the past 2 weeks, which is very out of character for him. And the Jets, they made it difficult on him again. Sauce Gardner probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Sauce Gardner is saucy.
He's a monster. And ever since he put on that cheese head, he's put the league on notice. So the Jets defense is legit, and the Bills had a little bit of a stinker in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It was weird to see.
Everybody knows that I'm a low-key Bills fan. Like, I love Josh Allen. Heavy.com has the shirt that they came out with at the beginning of the season, but it's for the Jets, and it's just says sauce right across. It's like his chain. It's like, I put that on last night. I was like, I don't even care anymore. You guys earned it. No, that defense, you're right. They're riding the tails of the defense for the Jets. Josh Allen, I think, was only blitzed twice in that game. And what I'm seeing happening is the same thing that we saw people do to the Chiefs last year, where, the Chiefs had to kind of overcome that bout of they didn't know what to do offensively because they were taking away the threat downfield. Basically what was happening here with the Bills, right? They took away Diggs. And I mean, Sauce was incredible. I think he only gave up one really big. But outside of that, no, Josh Allen's got to make a little bit better decisions. They targeted that offensive line. But now I think what we're seeing is people figured out how to stop the Bills, and the Bills are going to have to rise to the occasion and figure out how they're going to compromise for that,
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily worried about the Bills at all. I mean, this is just a testament to how well the Jets are playing that, they should make divisional games hard. That's what competent divisional opponents do. No matter how good the team at the top is, you should make it hard on them when they come into your home turf. And that's exactly what the Jets did, and they came out on top in that game. And the reason that I say the AFC East is the best division in football, we thought it might be the NFC East for a while, which was kind of upset of the century. But the AFC East is now the only division with all 4 teams having a winning record. And again, as a Patriots fan, I'm suffering a little bit because we're 5-4. I'm relatively happy with that. Like if you told me we'd be 5-4 through 9 games, I'd be like, okay, I'll take that. We're in last place. So that's where the AFC East is at. I mean, it's a constant dogfight. The Dolphins, their defense has been, iffy. They allowed Justin Fields to murder them, as we just talked about, but their offense is potentially the most explosive one in the league with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, adding Jeff Wilson now, who's clearly already comfortable, even though he's been in the facility for 4 days. AFC East is tough. I mean, I want to say the Patriots can squeak into the playoffs, but at this point, I don't know how they do. So shout out to this division. It is absolutely stacked.
Absolutely stacked. And we can kind of talk about the Dolphins coming up later, but the Dolphins are a different team with Tua out there, which is wild. I love it. I'm so excited for Tua because I feel like he's earned this.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk about him now if you want. We're in the AFC East discussion, and it's Dolphins. They are undefeated in games where Tua has started and finished the game. Like, the only games they've lost are games where he didn't play or went out early. So he has taken a huge step forward. I mean, it's wild to see him and Jalen Hurts as potentially two of the most impressive quarterbacks this season, and they were in the same quarterback room at Alabama for a little while. So who would have thought that those two guys would be at basically the top of the NFL, along with the big names like Mahomes, Allen, everybody else. So they've been super impressive. They're making the moves that they are indicating they want to make a Super Bowl push this year, trading for Bradley Chubb, again, trading for Jeff Wilson. They just need that secondary to be a little bit healthier and, be able to support the rest of that roster because it's very impressive.
100%. I also feel like Tua improved just coming off of the concussion issue. I mean, we're watching him now. The issue with Tua is a lot of times he would overthink things and
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Again, we were in Atlanta. I'm staying with a few friends, and I told them before the podcast that it's totally fine if they walk behind me. One of them, who is 6'4", decided he'd rather army crawl behind me and ended up still being in frame like a Great Dane that knows it's not supposed to be in front of you right now.
No, I respect it. I was more laughing because I feel like I need to prep this. If you guys hear me talking weird, it's because I had an allergic reaction. My tongue, for anyone watching, I still have like this burn, and every time I go to talk, it hurts so bad. And I'm just laughing because I feel like I'm like, when you get braces for the first time and people are like, "Are you okay?" You're like, "Yeah, it's fine. I just have this weird lisp." That's what I feel like I'm talking like right now. So anyways, and then the combination of the two started cracking me up.
There's a lot going on here. For those of you who are only listening through audio, you'd be like, I would have never known. But listen,
you're missing out.
For those who are watching visually about the moron that is crawling so he can get to the bathroom, and then also Maddie's tongue that is apparently burned. So we're in great shape here.
We're thriving. Back to Tua. He's getting the ball off quick. I love it because he's not second guessing as much. They have a few design throws, and Tyreek is just going off for him. You also have that dual threat with Waddle, and people don't know how to defend it. So I'm super excited. What's crazy is they're not even getting downfield. I mean, they're getting the balls. That sounded really weird. They're catching the ball middle of the field and then making plays after it, which is wild. That's exactly what you want. Going off in fantasy. We'll get to it later, but I'm really pissed that I didn't pick him up in DFS.
Yeah, the DFS contest, we will get into a little bit later. We'll be running it back this week as well, so stay tuned for details on that. But Maddie and I, our teams did okay. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But next up, right before we're going to get into midseason awards here shortly. But first, I want to talk about what I think is the other most notable storyline other than the Jets upsetting the Bills. The Packers. I actually have a Packers fan over my shoulder. He's kind of down bad from what has happened over the past few weeks. Basically, their entire team is on injured reserve, it feels like now. Rashawn Gary tore his ACL. Half the roster walked out in a walking boot. And the Packers they're really struggling right now. I don't know what's next for them because it doesn't feel like the rest of this season is necessarily salvageable. And, they neglected to go get a wide receiver at the trade deadline, despite several being available. I don't know what exactly they offered. There was a report they offered the Panthers a first and a second for DJ Moore. Not necessarily surprised they declined that if they were also trying to hold on to Brian Burns when they got a Godfather offer for him. So I guess the Panthers are trying to save some face. But yeah, the Packers are now underperforming and super injured and don't have an overly easy schedule coming up. So it seems like this is a lost season for them. I just don't know what to even think looking forward to next season for the Packers.
I'm really interested to see what happens just because, I mean, everybody knows I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan, but he made some just trash throws. And we've seen him do that here and there. I feel bad for your friend who's listening to me just about to demolish him. But you also, like, if you're going to be that dramatic and cause that much issues with the coaching staff in the locker room, you better go out and you better play your ass off. And yeah, he made a couple of throws that were in tight windows, but overall, he made some crappy decisions. Bakhtiari being out, obviously we know that what that does to Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if that man's going to be able to come back. And if he does, he's not going to be full force like he was. I mean, something's seriously wrong with his knee to the point where honestly, it's probably time for him to start thinking, like, is it even worth it? Should I continue to put my body on the line? But no, I feel like Aaron Rodgers, if you want to be a coach that damn bad, hang him up and go be a coach, because what you're doing right now is you're putting stress on your team. You're not being a leader. You're not helping in this area, and you're making trash throws. So your saving grace was the fact that you're this MVP caliber quarterback. But if you can't even play up to that level, then you need to reconsider some things. And I think Green Bay is going to have to take a long, hard look at where they want to go in the direction of this team, because right now it's just looking like they're just spinning the drain.
Well, Maddie, let's not forget, losing David Bakhtiari doesn't only mean that they're losing a piece of their O-line. It also apparently means they're losing their new favorite red zone target, because I have no idea what that was all about. That's the kind of play you run if you're an offense that is like absolutely humming, and you've got the defense worried about all these other weapons. You're like, oh, we can run a little trick play, maybe get a lineman, get him some love, wide open touchdown kind of deal. The Packers are completely sputtering. Their most productive offensive player other than Alan Lazard has been Samori Toure over the past 3 weeks. That's an exaggeration, but like the fact that this guy's involved in the offense is awful. I don't understand why you call that play. Granted, Aaron Rodgers puts a little more air under that. It's potentially complete, but like, why are you getting cute when your offense is struggling? Like, it's so weird to me. And now, things are only going downhill with injuries on top of it. The fact that they were underperforming with a mostly healthy roster makes me very worried about what's going to happen now that everyone's, in a walking boot, walking out of that stadium. So Packers are not in good shape. Rodgers, we assume, will be back next year. But for now, I don't know, because they have a one-way ticket to potentially a very high draft pick. And it's going to be a matter of, are we going to spend that pick on a quarterback, or are we going to spend it on something to help Rodgers, whether it's a lineman or, God forbid, call me crazy, a wide receiver. I have no idea. Maybe they'll think about it, but we'll see what the Packers are heading toward.
The Packers are like the equivalent of like the cheese at the high school football games, that has been just like heated up, unheated up, heated up, heated up. There's just like if you leave it sitting for like 3 minutes, it's just like rock solid. You could throw it through a wall, like through drywall. That's the way I picture the Packers right now.
I imagine Aaron Rodgers wants to put his head through drywall. But from last year's MVP to potentially this year's MVP, I wanted to get into some midseason awards, because we are now through 9 weeks of the season, just over halfway done. I feel like it's a good time to start talking about it. And I didn't have Maddie and I make these picks before the show. I feel like we're probably going to agree on a fair amount of them. So it didn't feel like, we need to argue with each other over who's going to win what. We'll see as we go who we think is going to win each one. But Maddie, I'll go, then you'll go for each one. We've got the main awards here. So MVP, I don't know if you'll agree. I mean, Josh Allen has been, his last 2 games haven't been great. I personally am going to go with Jalen Hurts. And for clarity, by the way, I've seen this sort of midseason awards done where it's like, oh, if the season ended today, who are these awards? I'm also predicting the rest of the way how things are going to go. So just keep that in mind. But Jalen Hurts, I'm going to go with him. I think the Eagles are going to finish with, like I said, at worst, a 15-2 record. If they go undefeated, I don't know how you give it to anyone else, but Hurts is the main reason I think that the Eagles have been able to play this well this season, and he's my MVP right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Rushing yards, absolutely incredible, but he's also efficient with the throw, and we haven't even seen them depend on the throw as much, just because they haven't been behind, right? They've been able to do whatever they want when they want. You guys have heard me talk about that offensive line. They're doing nasty things on the second level. Jason Kelce, I mean, when you see him roll out, throw out a couple of blocks, throw out a pancake, and then turn around and recover a fumble ball, what more can you want? This team believes in this quarterback. This quarterback's a leader. The coaching staff, the entire organization, Howie even, is fully around Jalen Hurts. And when you can have that big of an impact on an organization, I think that should be just as much as a consideration as what they're doing. And then what they're doing on the field is incredible. I mean, going undefeated. The other thing is Josh Allen. I'm a little worried just because Josh Allen, he himself came out and said that he's a little bit hurt. So what does a little bit hurt mean? If your quarterback's coming out and admitting to something, that worries me just a little bit. The Bills have much tougher of a schedule the rest of the season than the Eagles do. The Eagles it's kind of smooth sailing for the Eagles at this point. So unless something crazy happens, I don't think that it's unreasonable to think that they're going to go undefeated. So 100% I agree with you, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, to your point with Josh Allen too, injuries are almost always twice as bad as a player will let on. So if they're like, oh, I'm fine, it's like, oh, okay, they might be dinged up. And as soon as a player's like, I'm not fine, it's like, oh, okay, that's probably not great. But, and also to the Eagles' point, I believe they do have the easiest schedule the rest of the way as far as records that they are going to face. So, the rich get richer, 8-0 and no clear impediment to going undefeated. It'll be interesting to see if they can finish it off. But yeah, Jalen Hurts, front runner for MVP right now. Allen and Mahomes kind of looking right down his neck. We'll see what happens over the second half. But let's go to Offensive Player of the Year. Maddie, who are you picking for Offensive Player of the Year?
I have to go with Mr. Tyreek Hill. He's quarterback proof. I was all about Justin Jefferson coming into the season, but he's blowing him out of the water. He's leading in receiving yards. And I mean, I didn't realize how versatile he was until he hit Miami. And I have been incredibly impressed with him. I think that he's made moves to improve, but Tyreek Hill for me, 100%. I think he's like right now, I think it's like 1,106 or something like that receiving yards. I should probably look actually.
1,104. I got it up.
Okay,
right
104.
Yep.
Perfect. I thought that I would remember that, so I didn't write it down. Obviously, I didn't.
Only 2 yards off. You're good. No, I totally agree with you. I don't see how it's anybody other than Tyreek Hill. He's got 150 more yards than the second closest, which is Justin Jefferson. Tyreek Hill is, again, I feel like it's the most low-key record-breaking performance that we're on pace for right now. He is on pace to break Calvin Johnson's single-season receiving record. I don't know how you make anyone else the Offensive Player of the Year. I think the other candidates right now, if things play out over the rest of the season, Derrick Henry still has an outside shot. Seems like after the first few games where he was a little slow, he's back to his, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns a game type of player. But Tyreek Hill, if things keep trending this way, he's going to run away with that. Next, we've got Defensive Player of the Year. Honestly, I don't know that there's a clear-cut winner for this one.
Really?
Feel like I'm not sure. Do you have a strong feeling about Defensive Player of the Year?
For me, it's Micah Parsons.
Okay.
I mean, he's so disruptive. Teams are literally having to game plan around one defensive player, and he's so versatile. You see him literally everywhere. He's the whole reason why I feel like the Cowboys are still in it whenever they were going through their battles with like the quarterback and everything else. He was the leader of the Cowboys. And how often can you say that with a defensive player? For me, it's him.
Yep.
Who are you between?
So Micah Parsons, I feel like, is the favorite in most people's eyes. My thing, after this week, he was able to pad the stats a little bit against the Colts because of how bad they were. But Matthew Judon is now leading the league in sacks by 3 over the second place person, which is Zadarius Smith of the Vikings and Nick.
He had 3 this week.
Matthew Judon had 3 sacks this week. He's up to 11.5. He is like right on the border of being on pace to break the single season sack record. So again, we've got these records in play for these guys. It's like you have to consider them. So, just to be different and just to, again, push my agenda a little bit, I'll go with Matthew Judon because I do think if this pace keeps up, I mean, Patriots have played 9 games, 11.5 sacks. That means he's on pace for roughly 21 sacks or so. Yeah. I feel like that probably gets you Defensive Player of the Year unless Parsons is like right behind him and is also, a lot more versatile of a player. But I'll go with Judon. Why not? Fun.
I love Judon. I loved him when he was in Baltimore. I'm happy he's having success. And honestly, he is the defense of the Patriots.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's the same position.
The man with the red sleeves. Next, we've got Offensive Rookie of the Year. So this was an interesting one. I actually read an article by Bill Barnwell from ESPN yesterday, and he made his picks, but he took it from the perspective of if the season ended today, who he would pick for these awards. So his Offensive Rookie of the Year was actually Chris Olave, which makes a lot of sense because to this point, he's been the most consistent performer, just easily the best offensive rookie. But if I'm projecting this the rest of the season, which is what I said I was going to do, I feel like it's Kenneth Walker. The only reason that Kenneth Walker probably wasn't picked by Barn was because there were those first few weeks where he started slow, where Rashad Penny was still healthy. Now, Kenneth Walker looks like one of the best backs in the league. He is, I still think, the heart of the Seahawks offense right now. I mean, he's helping Geno be able to have this resurgent season with how well he's running the ball. So I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker. I think when it's all said and done, he will have, some more impressive stats, some more eye-popping numbers than Chris Olave will. And also, it won't hurt if the Seahawks end up making the playoffs, kind of with him not leading the charge, but as a big, big piece of it. The Saints don't know what they're going to do. It's really down to those two right now. I feel like Kenneth Walker and Olave, and I'm going to give the edge to Walker.
What's funny is Walker is actually mine. I didn't really think about Olave, but I kind of like that pick also though, because if you think about it, like his quarterbacks have been Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston,
Sure.
and Tyson Hill. Like,
Sure.
okay, he's making something out of literally nothing, which I kind of like. But he wasn't my pick. But I kind of like that pick.
Yeah, I think it's going to be those two fighting for it.
Mhm.
You know, the other candidates, you've got Dameon Pierce. He has an argument, but on the Texans, I feel like that'll ultimately limit his ceiling a little bit. Still one of the most fun rookies to watch. Guy is an absolute tank. No reason he should have been a 4th round draft pick.
Right.
And then Garrett Wilson's kind of lurking in the shadows a little bit. He's in the discussion. Again, things can play out a lot over the course of the next 8 weeks. But for right now, I think it is Walker's award to lose. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Maddie, why do I feel like I have an idea of who you're going to go with? Because it's also going to be who I'm going to go with, and it's a guy we've already talked about.
Saucy.
Yeah, I don't
Sauce
think
Gardner.
anybody else.
No, I mean, he's everything that everybody talked him up to be. He's gone above and beyond what I expected. And the kid doesn't stop. I mean, he's just a dog out there. It is funny because every time I hear that TikTok trend where it's like, I got the sauce. Baby, I'm sauce. You know, that's what I think of every time.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. Well, yes. Totally understood. But also, no.
I don't even know if I can sing his praises anymore. I mean, it's just.
I think Sauce Gardner is kind of a runaway with this award right now. But you've also got guys like Tariq Woolen on the Seahawks who made himself, relevant and in this conversation when nobody expected he would be. Devin Lloyd on the Jaguars is an option. Before the season, I believe my prediction was Aiden Hutchinson, but he's been a little up and down, so I don't think he's going to end up, coming away with it. Sauce's award to lose. Congrats, Sauce. Wear that cheese head proudly. Comeback Player of the Year. This one, I feel like there's a few options.
This I struggled with. I'm not going to lie.
Struggle with this one. I mean, there's a few guys, and for me, Comeback Player of the Year is always interesting because you can almost interpret it different ways. So I believe Alex Smith won this award. Because he came back from that just absolutely catastrophic injury. So sometimes it's coming back from injury. Sometimes it's coming back from just a bad season. I'm going to pick a guy who kind of came back from both. I'm going with Saquon Barkley. I feel like a lot of people were kind of writing him off after last year. They're like, I'm sick of him. They're putting him in the same boat as McCaffrey. Like, oh, he's just always going to be hurt. He's never going to be the guy we saw his rookie year. He's done. I'm like,
it's one of those people.
Like, no, like, I don't think that's going to happen. And he's proving people wrong. You specifically. So I'm going Saquon Barkley. I think he's probably the favorite right now, but I'm curious to see if you have a different answer.
That's who I settled on just because the Giants would be nothing without Saquon Barkley.
Absolutely.
And he's completely changed the trajectory of that team. That's really hard to say when your tongue's all messed up. So that's who but I also low-key was going back and forth between Geno Smith. We have some entertainment.
ESPN decided to autoplay an ad for me real quick. No big deal.
Oh, thanks, ESPN. They're getting lots of love on this podcast today.
I know.
Geno Smith was just my other one just because I feel like everybody was just down and out on that team. And I think that nobody expected him to come out and do what he's doing. But I had to give it to Saquon just because he's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it's really a 2 or 3 horse race between Saquon, Geno Smith, and you can put Christian McCaffrey in there because of the same thing.
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey's, obviously on a different team. I don't know if that muddies his outlook or if it changes it at all, but he's having a great season. So I could see it being him as well. But Saquon feels like the obvious one just because he is, like you said, leading a really we thought was going to be a really bad team, and it's not, and it's largely because of him. So I think he's the guy for that. And then we've got Coach of the Year. Maddie, who you got for Coach of the Year?
I'm going with old Nick Sirianni. I mean, you have your team's currently undefeated right now. They did everything that they possibly could to set themselves up for success, and they're getting creative. They've backed up their quarterback. He is making smart decisions, great play calling. And he's corralled this team. So I don't know how he's not the top of the list for everybody right now.
Yeah, I'm going with Nick Sirianni as well. That team's undefeated. We all thought they'd be pretty good coming into the year. I don't think we thought 8-0 good. So Nick Sirianni's the guy. Couple other guys in contention for it. I mean, you could argue even Pete Carroll leading the Seahawks, with Geno Smith as their quarterback. Geno's getting a lot of credit for that as well, and rightfully so. But Pete's done a great job keeping the morale high and keeping that roster motivated and playing incredibly well to the point where they have a 2-game lead in the NFC West, which I did not think was going to happen.
No one did. I thought they were going to be bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, so he's a contender. A couple other guys out there, but I think Nick Sirianni is the odds-on favorite for sure. And then that brings us to a sort of a similar discussion, our power rankings. So we did this a couple weeks ago. I don't think it's worth doing every single week because a lot of the time there's not enough turnover to talk about it every week, but it's been a few weeks now. We can revisit it. And my thought for this week was to kind of do it in reverse. So normally you do it.
I like that also.
Yeah. So in the past, the only other time we've done it, we did it, from 5 to 1, revealing the number 1 at the end. To me, especially with this season and all the teams being so top heavy, we kind of know who's going to be at the top. So I wanted it to be more of a dramatic reveal of who's squeaking into our top 5. So we'll go from 1 to 5 instead of 5 to 1. I'll start us off. The Eagles are number 1. I mean, they're undefeated. I feel like it's obvious the Bills are sputtering a little bit, so that took them off of really any consideration in my mind for the number 1 spot. Eagles are playing incredibly well. We just talked about them for a bit. Not much else to say.
Their schedule's light coming forward.
Yeah, the schedule's light coming up. They probably won't be giving up this number 1 spot for a while. Maybe not until the playoffs get here. So Eagles at number 1. Number 2, I'm still going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I'm not going to take too much stock in the sputtering that has been going on against the Jets and the Packers, even though they came out on top against the Packers. I think they'll get back on track. I actually think they're probably going to pummel the Vikings because they're going to be angry this week. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty electric game against the Titans, which we didn't expect. The Titans actually played pretty well. Patrick Mahomes with almost record-breaking 68 pass attempts. I thought I was looking at a typo when I looked at that this morning in the box score. Just completely abandoning the run. But the Chiefs are still a wagon. I think still the clear second-best team in the AFC. 4th, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Their defense is performing incredibly well, and they are the main reason that the NFC East is blowing my expectations out of the water because it has 2 legitimate Super Bowl contenders within it, and the Cowboys and the Eagles. Those fan bases are going to be at each other's throats for forever, but especially this year. And as the season draws to the playoffs. So the Cowboys have played really, really well. Potential defensive player of the year, like we said, with Micah Parsons. And they just look really good, especially if they would give Tony Pollard maybe a few more carries, but who knows? And then the dramatic reveal, because this is my team squeaking into the number 5, just talked about them a little bit, the Seattle Seahawks. At a certain point, we got to just stop denying what we're seeing. A 2-game lead in the NFC West over the 49ers. They're above the Rams, obviously, as well. They are playing inspired football. If Kenneth Walker keeps playing like this, and if Geno Smith keeps playing like this, and I have no reason to believe they won't, Tariq Woolen as well leading the defense, they're legit. Like, they're at this point my pick to win the division, and with a 2-game lead, that may not sound bold, but with how stacked the Niners roster is, you would think maybe a lot of people are still going to pick them. But no, I think the Seahawks win that division, and I think they can make some noise in the playoffs.
I feel this is going to be kind of funny. Okay, my top 5's almost exactly the same as Bran's except for 1. So we'll just go ahead and roll through it. I don't want to spend a ton of time. My number 1, Eagles. Everybody knows. I'm excited. I believe the Eagles will be in the Super Bowl, and I will probably be there in Eagles gear with a Batman mask on. Fly, Eagles, fly. Number 2 is the Bills. The Bills, I still feel like, just like you said, the Bills are elite. They have a little bit tougher of a schedule. Like I mentioned earlier, it does kind of worry me about what's happening with Josh Allen. I'm a little nervous about what's going on with the offensive line. There seems to be a little bit of injury. They're not as adaptive as what they used to be. The lateral movements kind of changing with left tackle. So that kind of worries me. Hopefully that kind of just fixes itself as long as we go, but they're still my number 2. Number 3, Chiefs. Honestly, I don't know how much of that game you got to see last night. I wanted to kind of move them down, but because they're the Chiefs, because of Patrick Mahomes, I felt like I had to keep them at 3. But they make just some of the dumbest mistakes. They just do. And I don't know. They may fall for me, but I feel like I had to keep him in there just because of Patrick Mahomes. To be honest with you, that 2-point conversion, I don't feel like they should have gotten because I feel like Travis Kelce initiated that last penalty that they called that they actually scored on. They gave them the ball back. He locked up first. That's why the defender had to lock up. And I think that if they didn't have that call, it would have been a different situation. I think that they could have lost. So Kansas City is kind of like this for me. Let's go to 4. I have the Cowboys, exact same as you. I agree that defense is unbelievable. I think that really the only challenge that they're going to have moving forward through the rest of the schedule is the Eagles. And then 5 is where it gets, this one I feel like is going to be very political. I'm throwing in the Dolphins only because I feel like the Dolphins actually have an easier schedule the rest of the season. Tua looks phenomenal. Tyreek Hill looks phenomenal. Waddle looks phenomenal. They are coming each week with different packages that they didn't have the week before, which tells me that they're constantly evolving. They're adaptable. They're able to make changes on the fly, which is exactly what you want when you start thinking about the playoffs, because you have to come with a whole different plan. And their defense is performing well. You know, they went out, they spent some on Chubb, which I think was a phenomenal decision. I think that it's working out great so far. So yeah, Dolphins made their way into my top 5.
I like that. I think the Dolphins have as much potential as anybody. My worry with them is they feel like they play down to their opponents a lot.
They do.
So
do the Vikings.
Right, exactly. So against the Steelers, they only won 16-10 despite having such an explosive offense. And then you've got their past 2 games against the Lions and the Bears. Like, they win 31-27 and then 35-32. Why are you allowing the Lions and Bears to just absolutely rip your defense apart? I know that there's, it's not the most stacked defense. That's not the strength of this team. Part of the reason they went out and got Bradley Chubb, but I worry about the defensive side of things. But after you get past the top 3 or 4 teams, like, everybody's going to have some level of weakness. And I think the Dolphins have as much potential as anybody to, honestly run the table. So that's how wide open things are this year. I wouldn't pick them to do it. I wouldn't be shocked if they did either. Now we've got game picks for this week. So every week I pick a couple of games that I like the point spreads on that I want to pick. Last week, so we had 3 picks last week. Pretty boring results because 2 of them pushed. 2 of them literally pushed. It was, I believe, Vikings -3. Hold on, I have a screenshot right here. Let's see. It was Vikings -3 versus the Commanders. And Falcons +3 versus the Chargers. Both of those games were 20-17 final scores. They pushed. The other one I had Patriots -6 versus the Colts. They obviously covered that. So if you tailed me, you won some money, just not a lot because, 2 of them pushed. But that's fine. We move on to this week. Maddie, I guess your Taylor Heineke, assistance may have worked, may have not worked, however you want to look at it. But this week, my first
I did slide in the DMs and
perfect.
He opened it, he accepted it, and did not reply, which is what I do to people who I'm just like, I want you to know that I'm ignoring you. Like, it's not just like the casual, like, I wonder if they just never got the notification or they're not active. No, he opened it because you have to accept the messages.
Yeah.
And I got the alert that he accepted it with no reply. So I was like, and that's false. But maybe I threw him off his game because he was like, why does this girl think she's in my league? He probably like started second guessing himself. So
yeah, he's out there trying to
take the dub for that.
Vikings, and he's thinking about that DM he got from the girl with the podcast. So that's a possibility. So my first pick for this week, I hinted at it earlier. I'm going to go with the Bills -7.5. I feel like after these 2 straight games versus Josh Allen, I'm just not pressing the panic button for the Bills. I think they're going to be just fine. I think this is an opportunity for a statement game this week. I just think it's a big bounce back opportunity for the Bills against the Vikings. And the Vikings, I also expect this to potentially expose them a little bit. I don't think this 7-1 record is super reflective of their actual potential this year and how good they are. I saw a stat earlier today that the Vikings were 6-8 last year in 1-score games. They are 6-0 this year in 1-score games. So is it that they know how to close games better, or is this just a sign that regression is coming? I lean toward the regression is coming side of things. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Who knows? But I think the Bills win this game by a decent amount. I think they cover the 7.5. Then I've got the Dolphins -4 against the Cleveland Browns. Dolphins are at home. I just think the Dolphins are an absolute wagon on offense. The Browns don't scare me. 4 points isn't a lot of points. So I'm going to take the Dolphins to cover there. And then this one is one that I don't feel great about, but I
don't like this one. I'm going to be honest with you.
I totally understand. But I mean, after today's news too, I sort of feel okay about it. It's the Raiders -6 against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts now have somebody barely more qualified than you or I to coach a football team. That's not true. He played NFL football, but they plucked an analyst out of a studio to coach a football team. I don't know how well that's going to go. I think the Raiders need to get some level of improvement after losing to the Jags. I mean, they put up a bunch of points and then just choked away a lead despite a huge game from Devontae Adams. I feel like they still have what it takes to respond to disappointment like that and cover potentially a 6-point spread against a team that is just absolutely reeling and is now bringing in Jeff Saturday to coach them. So those are my three picks for this week.
The hope is that when you can't put up a single point in an NFL game, that the next week you come back with some anger in you, some fight, and that you try to show that you have some sort of like oomph in you. So hopefully that works out in your favor. It's just the Raiders are just, wow, what is happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, they got
It
shut
almost
out
makes me think
shockingly a
like,
couple weeks ago with the Devontae Adams flu game that went, not according to plan. And then Devontae apparently took some Advil, said I'm ready to go. 100 and something yards in the first half with 2 touchdowns, ended up finishing with 146 yards. Guy was a beast, but they still lost to the Jaguars.
what was the score for this week? Was it
the Raiders and the Jags? Let's see. I believe it ended up 27-20, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. No, that sounds about right, because I thought that the Raiders were around 20. But still, you just I really expected them to come out and put on a show after they just put up nothing. And I felt like if they were playing any other team other than the Jags, that they could have possibly had another shutout. So
I'm having a little bit more blind faith in the Raiders, not to do anything significant this season, but to beat a completely reeling team like the Colts. I mean, I believe our own Matt Lombardo is calling for Josh McDaniel to be left on the tarmac in Jacksonville. That was how he worded it. So the Raiders are definitely not doing great, but I feel like this is an opportunity for them to show, we are not completely laying down this year. We can beat a team like the Colts, who just are throwing away this season, it seems, and are, struggling with yet another season of quarterback carousel that has gone wrong with Matt Ryan and then now Sam Ellinger. I have no idea who's going to be under center next year. It could be Russell Wilson for all I know, but that's where they're at right now.
I do have a question for you. This has nothing to do with the lines, but because of your situation and who we're talking about, how do you feel where we're at right now with the McDaniels hire? Do you think that they regret it? Do you think, because obviously you've been a fan of McDaniels, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this is not the first time he's failed as an NFL head coach. He failed in this same division with the Denver Broncos. I don't know what to think of him. I feel like they probably regret it a little bit because they're probably seeing a lot of what they saw with the Broncos, that it's just this role may just not be for him. The Raiders have talent on both sides of the ball that suggests that they could have competed for the division this year if they had a coach that was able to kind of get them over that hump. I don't think McDaniels is that guy. They may give him some more time to figure it out. But again, our own Matt Lombardo and some other analysts are calling for them to just fire him midseason, much like we've seen with Nathaniel Hackett, people calling for his head. I was a little surprised that Frank Reich was the first one to go. I mean, I wasn't surprised that he got fired, but there were other guys that I thought were, high up on that list. I thought McDaniels being one of them. Yeah, I feel like there is some regret, and he may listen. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the Patriots OC again in a couple of years.
You think so? You think they'd take him back?
The Patriots take everyone back. Matt Patricia and Joe Judge are on this staff, and nobody's
even take Cam back.
No one's even. Well, he throws lawn darts. He doesn't count. But no one's even sure what these guys do. Like Bill's people are like, Bill, who's the offensive coordinator? He's like, no. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
Cool. So Matt Patricia just builds macaroni sculptures in the facility then, and that's what he does, and Joe Judge helps him and brings the glue. Nobody knows what they do specifically. So I wouldn't be surprised if they brought McDaniels back, especially if they're, him being gone. I think he's a good OC, and him being gone, obviously we've seen some regression from Mac Jones, and it's hard to believe that that's not correlated. So if he became available, I think we'd see him back. But listen, he's got to get fired from the Raiders first, which I'm not totally convinced happens this year, maybe after the season.
He's going to have to do something, though, because I really feel like this is his last leg, his last opportunity to be a head coach. So figure it out. Try not to get fired.
Right. At least the last one for a long time. Let's move on to DFS. So we had our first FanDuel contest last week. We had Madi and I competing against any viewer that wanted to enter. It was $5 entry with a bunch of cash prizes. Madi, how'd your team pan out?
I asked to not even cover this. I really tried to get out of this because I'm mortified. I placed 48th. It was awful. I blew my money. I went heavy on a quarterback, Josh Allen, who didn't really do well for me. And I basically got my flex and my tight end for nothing, who literally gave me no points almost. And I'm going to have to come at this week with a different game plan because I'm just so mad at myself because I thought about stacking Tua and Hill this week and I just didn't change it. I was like, no, don't second
Generally a
guess
good
yourself.
option any week.
Yeah. I was
Exactly.
like, don't second guess yourself because I would have had to reformulate everything because of the
Right.
financial stuff. So I was like, don't second guess yourself. Just go with it. Like, you're a big Josh Allen fan. It's going to be great. And then
It was less
it
than
was not
great.
great. It was not great, but it was super fun. And now I'm ready to come out and showboat next week.
Yeah. So these contests are super fun. We're going to run it back this week. We'll get you guys some link info in the next day or so. Just stay tuned to the socials and videos and stuff. We'll be promoting it everywhere. But hey, my lineup went pretty well. I finished 20th out of, I believe it was 97 people. So not the best, not the worst. Basically was carried by 3 guys. It was Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, and Devontae Adams. For the money that I spent on Amon-Ra St. Brown, he did not do what I wanted. He had 7.5 points. Spent a decent chunk on Gerald Everett, considering that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were both out. I thought he would do a good amount, and he was targeted a lot. It just didn't lead to a lot of yardage. It was kind of the Josh Palmer and Austin Eckler show. But overall, I mean, listen, 20th, 123 points. I'm not going to get upset about that, but it was not as good as our winner from this week, who actually, looking at the scoreboard now, blew out everybody. I mean, the second place had 17 fewer points than our winner, B. Sandifer 21, with the lineup of Justin Fields, the aforementioned Austin Eckler, Travis Etienne, Justin Jefferson got 22. Gabe Davis was kind of a dud. Saved some money on Scotty Miller, who actually salvaged 8.8 points, which is not bad for a guy that you paid nothing for. Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst, the double tight end strategy. Don't know how I feel about that, but it worked. And then the Patriots D, I think this is kind of what put him over the edge. 26 points out of the Patriots defense with that late touchdown from Jonathan Jones. So congrats, B. Sander, for 21 with the $100 that you won. Now, this is a big thing. It's a big thing. Like, if you join this contest, there's a good chance you're going to win some money. This contest actually didn't even fill this past week. Obviously, we want that to change in the weeks coming forward. But if it fills up with only, 97 people, I believe it's the top 50 or so slots are getting paid out no matter what. So
I placed 48th and I still got to pay out. I got my money back.
So you've got a good chance to win some money regardless. So, hey, get in there this week. See if you can beat me or Maddie. I, for one, am going to keep a tally. I am 1-0 against Maddie. And I'm
coming back.
Coming back.
But also our winner, we don't know who you are just because of your name. So if you're up for it, shoot me or Bran a DM so that we can give you a little bit of shout out on social media, because I'm excited. And now I'm coming for you next week. I really need you to play again next week.
Yeah, you deserve it. You've created an absolute wagon of a team. So we want to shout you out if we can. And running the contest back, see if you can, I don't know, pull off 2 in a row, but I plan to win this week, so probably not. Just to give you guys the full details of the contest we gave him last week, it's going to be the same contest this week. Maximum 150 entries, $100 for first place, 50 for second place, and then some additional prizes, I believe up to 50th place. You can at least double your money. And our link will be in our bio on TikTok, probably on Instagram, everywhere else in our little link tree that we have. So just keep it locked. We'll get you more specific details on that in the next day or so.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of viewer questions as well. I ask this every week. People jump into the IG DMs with whatever they want to hear us talk about from the NFL. This question I thought was interesting. Justin Fields has kind of been a theme of the show. What is the Bears' potential for next season considering their salary cap situation? And for those that don't know, their salary cap situation is that they have the highest salary cap in the league next year available. I believe it's $113 million or so that they can spend on free agents. So they can kind of do whatever they want with that and, attack whatever positions they feel they need, potentially linebacker now that they trade Roquan Smith. The one caveat here is that there's not really a ton of great receivers, which a lot of people view as the biggest weakness for the Bears. I could pull it up right now. Yeah, the best available receivers, at least the highest paid ones this year, that's kind of how Spot Rack sorts it. You got Nelson Aguilar, Sterling Shepard, DJ Chark, Randall Cobb, Marvin Jones. And if we're being realistic and just looking at what I believe to be the best players available, you got Jacoby Myers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mac Hollins. I don't know. Are those guys the answer? Probably not. So the Bears, they won't be able to address that position, but they can address plenty of others. They have a chance to be a playoff team next year. Again, this expansion to 7 teams per conference kind of lets that be a more attainable goal for teams like the Bears, who seem like they may have their quarterback situation figured out. But Maddie, what do you think? Are the Bears going to be able to make kind of a push for playoffs, maybe contention next year, or what's their situation?
It's solely going to depend on what happens in the offseason. The ideal situation is you bring in a veteran wide receiver versus a rookie, because I know everybody's like, oh, they can make some moves in the draft. But the
Mhm.
thing is you need somebody who can step in, be a leader. The issue is there's just not a ton of availability around the league, especially for a decent price point. The other thing is they do need to evolve. They obviously have some holes now on the defense that they're going to have to kind of figure out, and that's going to be a huge deal. And then we talk about the offensive line that still needs a little bit of work. And then I think 2 of their offensive linemen are going to be coming up on contracts because they just kind of got them in those quick deals. So everything's going to depend on what they do in the offseason. But I definitely think that playoff potential is there if they play their cards right.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the top just overall free agents coming into this offseason. You've got Orlando Brown, Tom Brady, no, Deion Jones, J.J. Watt, Marcus Peters, Jack Conklin, Fletcher Cox, Robert Quinn, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, there's a lot of guys they can go after. I would be surprised if the Bears didn't end up with like at least 2 of those guys, considering they are trying to build toward a contending roster and have so much money. They're not just going to head into next season with $80 million of unused cap. So you would expect some of these names to end up on the Bears. Which names, I'm not sure, but I do think they can make that push. But yeah, wide receiver is going to be an interesting one because hopefully Claypool can make that step. I don't know. Claypool and Darnell Mooney, if we came into this year and you were like, their wide receiving core is going to be Claypool and Mooney, I'd be like, that's not great. But also, I expected Mooney to be good this year, and he just started really slow and is now sort of getting his feet under him. That's one of those receiving cores that it's like you almost feel like it might be good enough if they can beef up everything else around it. So we'll see. Maybe they draft a rookie receiver that performs like a Chris Olave or a Garrett Wilson, and maybe that is enough in the receiving room, and they just have to beef up everything else. So
I think a lot of that's development, though, which I don't feel like the Bears have the capability. That's why I kind of feel like veteran is the way to go.
Sure. I'm optimistic about the Bears, but we'll see. There's definitely going to be a lot of movement in Chicago this offseason. And then the last one, this is another NFC North question. Why does nobody care about my 7-1 Vikings? Now, I kind of touched on this a little bit. Maddie, tell me if you agree. I feel like it's because we don't really know what would make them special. They're kind of just there and playing well. Am I wrong on that?
It's because the Vikings match energy, right? They're going to do just enough to try to like stay in the game. They're not going out. They're not consistent, right? We see them play at these crazy high levels to win games that they shouldn't win. But then we also see them fall down to teams that you should be blowing out of the water. To be honest with you, I feel like this is going to be a lot harder to gain respect after the video that just came out of Kirk shirtless with just stacks of diamonds on top of him.
That was
what is happening? Great for team morale, but no, the Vikings, it's just we don't know what they are because they're not consistent. They're energy matchers, which we know when it comes to the playoffs, you have to get to that next level. And if you don't get to that next level, then you're on your ass. And I feel like that's where I get nervous with the Vikings is we have yet to see them level up and stay at a level. It's just they try to match whatever energy's there. And they just make silly mistakes sometimes where it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, if you look up and down the Vikings schedule, I mean, you don't see anything overly impressive. They opened the season with a win against the Packers, who we thought that was an impressive win out of the gate because it was week 1, and we were like, oh, well, the Packers are still the division favorites, and that didn't go great. So then you've got a loss to the Eagles, a win over the Lions, a win over the Saints, a win over the Bears when Fields was not hitting this supernova status yet, a win over the Dolphins, who did not have Tua in that game, a win over the Cardinals, and then they beat the Commanders by 3 points. So we're about to find out really quick whether they're legit or not, because their next 4 games are at Buffalo versus Dallas versus New England and versus the Jets. So those are 4 teams who all have winning records and have all played pretty well this season. Obviously, the Bills being the AFC favorite. And then Cowboys, Patriots, Jets are just teams that are tough. So, I mean, if the Vikings can come out of that stretch, I don't know, 3-1, even 2-2, I might be more likely to consider them like legitimate contenders. But for right now, you hate to call a team fake 8 games into the year, but it reminds me a lot of the 11-0 Steelers, and I'm going to keep bringing them up. It's like if every game is sort of going your way in terms of strength of your opponent, like you're just entering games against teams that are not that great, you can't ignore the context. And the context for the Vikings right now is there's really nothing for them to hang their hats on other than they've done the job against the teams they've played. and not much impressive beyond that. So that's where I'm at with the Vikings.
But
right
even
now.
just like yesterday, if Heineke doesn't do Heineke things, the Commanders probably win.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I'm just going through all their points. Almost every single win that they've had has been within a 10-point span, and actually less than that. There's a couple of them that spread it to the 10-point, but it's just wild to me that they just hang right there no matter who it's with. They don't have anything special about them. You're right. I like that. But I do think that they're about to lose the next two. Bills, Cowboys, I don't think that they're going to be able to pull either one of those out.
Yeah, and I mean, God forbid they go, 0-4 in their next 4 games, which is not out of the realm of possibility.
Patriots could do that.
Yeah, it will be fraud city population Vikings. So we'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks. But that will do it for the actual content of this week's edition of Off the Bench. We just want to remind you guys again that DFS contest. We'll get more details out on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere, wherever you follow us. We have a bunch of socials. You'll get the details if you're keeping up with us. And try and beat Maddie, try and beat me. $5 entry. Promise it's worth it because there's a decent chance you can make a little bit of money. And of course, make sure you follow the pod wherever you're listening, subscribe, and please give us a good rating. If you've listened this far, you've been listening to us ramble for an hour about football. So that must mean you like us a little bit. So just click the little 5-star thing and we'll be very happy. It'll help us a lot. We're already a top 200 sports podcast. That's crazy. This is episode 4. So, I mean, we were kind of
top
in that
50
realm.
in football.
Right. We were right in that realm off of episode 1 and we've stayed there. So that's awesome. We just want to continue to climb those ranks and you guys can help us do that. So that's all I want to say. Maddie, any final words before we sign off?
We have somebody, our producer is going to help us pull some questions out of the review section is where we're going to do some too. So if you guys can submit some viewer questions in the review section of the podcast, go ahead and rate us a 5-star too. But we're going to be pulling from there because we want to involve you guys also. And I think that we're going to do another live this week. We kind of threw one together this past week and it was really fun. So bring your questions. Do you want to do it again on Thursday?
Yeah, a little Thursday night football pre-show is kind of what we are planning to do every week as long as schedules allow, which generally they will. So it's basically the half hour before the kickoff of Thursday night football. Maddie and I will be live on many different platforms taking your questions. It's mostly going to be an interactive thing where we'll come in with a few things we are going to talk about to preview the game. But otherwise, we want to talk to you guys. We want to have your input and just go back and forth. I mean, I'm live on Twitch, about once a week, and that sort of format is super fun just to hear you guys and be more hands-on with you guys rather than just, listening to the podcast and not being able to kind of engage with us as much. So that's what that's going to be designed for. And hope to see you guys there. We'll be on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, Tumblr. I don't know, every platform. So just keep a lookout. Probably not MySpace and Tumblr, but maybe.
Yeah. Maybe we'll give away a Kyle Pitts jersey. I don't know. We'll see if
I'll give away mine. You can just have it. I don't know.
That was just a joke. I just love that he threw the $100-some jersey just on the ground.
This is a handkerchief as far as I'm concerned. So I don't need that anymore. But thank you guys for listening. We will be back next week. We have a new episode every single Tuesday. So keep it locked. And of course, watch out for those contests. But for Maddie Kroll, I'm Brandon Carney. We're going back on the bench for now, but we will see you Thursday and then Tuesday as well. See you guys.